That's another maybe thing about nines is what I call Mr. Magoo. And that kind of popped into my head there with Gerald Ford. You know, like kind of, they're so not in their bodies that they're walking into things or tripping over things. They're, you know.
Well, I saw a wonderful interview years ago with the Dalai Lama, and they asked him, what is your favorite thing? And he said, just like this, sleep.
What? Sleep?
Sleep, yeah. Don't say that too loudly, because the nines will start falling asleep. Jim Henson, who was the puppet master. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Barack Obama.
With the big 8.
Social knife. Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that I, think is there is that for me, nines have a certain tone, a certain lower registry. Again, it's not exciting. It doesn't sort of go up and down. It's more a monotone, and that's often how I pick up on 9 energy. And 9s can talk your ear off. It's a little like I was telling you the story about the 4 who I just couldn't get her to go. It was like she just kept talking, and I eventually just had to walk away. 9s can just talk your ear off. It's like hard to get away. Okay, so who do we have who is a 9 who might be willing to share? Give us an insight into what it's like to be a 9.
Well, I think,
Can you come over here for the camera just?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right back here.
Is this good?
No, come back. There you go, perfect.
Okay. I think the Enneagram, I think the most important thing to say about any of these types is it depends upon your consciousness, your evolution. So as you were speaking, Jerry, I kept thinking, I know I'm a 9, I've known this for decades, but I'm not relating to this. Well, I'm a social 9 with a 1 wing. And when he got to the social part, then I could really get it. So, I've done a lot of mediation in my life. I'm often called on informally, to do this, Carolyn, I'm having communication problems. Would you be the mediator here? For the last 34 years, I have directed a nonprofit whose purpose is to support the shift in consciousness from separation and fear to unity and love. So I've been very active, but it's all toward peace. And I've written a couple of books, and the process that we use in this organization is all based on resonance, maintaining the heart space, non-judgment. So I can really see how all that operates in my life. I don't feel lazy at all. Self-forgetting I relate to, in that when you said, Jerry, I'm happy if the other person is happy, that's true. I want the other person to feel good. And I notice in conversations, if I'll be in a group, somebody may say something that's sort of confrontational, and I will say to myself, ooh, I would never say that. So I notice, like, if I were here with someone who has really strong views that I don't agree with, I would be apt to say, I have a different perspective. I wouldn't go into conflict, but I would just express, well, I have a different perspective.
Thank you. That's
Good.
Now, I want you to come up here to the camera.
Dennis, you gotta come up.
So now you're going to see a different energy of Poor Dennis. No, your other hand. Come on, over here. And so use that hand, just put it right up here.
So I am definitely a 9, and I think
Finally, he has
a social 9 with a 1 wing. I remember very distinctly when I was in high school, what the school bully said, I would be very afraid of you if you ever got mad. And that's been my life's, occupation, is not to get mad. Sometimes I want to get even, but I usually forget about it before I want to get even. Slow to burn, and then a flash of anger, and then within half an hour I probably can't remember what it was about. The other thing that I remember being told was, this was a county administrator speaking to me, and he said, you're the most powerful department head in the county. You have control of everything. And I said, then why don't I feel like it?
Oh.
Yeah.
Talk about your busyness.
My what?
Busyness.
Well, I'm always doing something.
How many committees are you on, Jonathan?
I'm on about half as many as I used to be. Because I had to slow down a little bit. By view of my environment, my home, my car, I would rather have something go wrong with my car in the driveway so I can fix it. My home is in better condition than the day it was built, because I can't stand it if a light switch doesn't work. If something doesn't work in the house correctly, it just drives me crazy until I fix it, because I want that sense of security. And I try to head off problems before they become problems. What else do you owe? I grew up as the oldest of 6 kids, and I think I disclosed that back a while ago, where I was 4.5 years older than the next one down, and I was a surrogate parent because my father was in the military in Korea. And part of the thing, what has happened in this class, is I realized that while I harbor a lot of anger toward him, I really don't remember him. I couldn't tell you, other than him giving me what he called a butch rub, where you do this to the top of your head. I feared him because every time he saw me, he wanted to grab me and give me a butch rub. Well, I didn't want the butch rub. It was painful. And so I pretty much disassociated from him, and when my mother remarried, I accepted my stepfather as by being my father. And when Jerry will tell you, whenever I refer to my father, I'm referring to my stepfather. Rarely do I refer to my natural father. And I would not want to be like him. However, the list of people that, particularly the politicians, those are my heroes. Lincoln, Roosevelt, Barack Obama. Those are, I'm not displeased at all to be listed in that group. The thing he wants me to self-disclose is my napping.
You don't have to self-disclose anything.
When I retired, where I didn't have all of the responsibilities that I had, I found the concept of taking a nap. So between 3 and 5, generally, I would take a nap get undressed, get in bed, and take a nap. But I found now that I have fewer and fewer responsibilities, the naps are more prevalent. So when I finished eating dinner, I go down and take a nap because the show I want to watch on television is not on yet. But I do like television. I won't watch trash television, the soap operas generally, I'm not interested. There was a program last night on Rome, on the rise of Rome. I'm very interested in those types of programs, and I watched 3 of the 4 episodes in one sitting. And I tend to do that with television. It's kind of taken over as my source of entertainment. When we were building this peacemaker really came out. When we were building this building, I bought a dozen donuts every single day for 6 months because I wanted the crews to be on a sugar high and not be angry with each other. And Larry knows that I was doing this. I may have even told Larry why I was buying all those donuts. Because if they were busy on a sugar high, they didn't get mad at each other. And it was peaceful. There was no bad language between the contractors use bad language, but there was no bad language between them, and no arguments or just discussions that were not appropriate. So that's it. That's me.
And if you buy the last story about why he bought the donuts, you're sadly delusional. But Dennis is the example of someone who, he was the general services manager for the county, meaning, everything that got bought, all the maintenance, all the buildings, so he worked his way up the ladder doing all that, and yet, can turn the switch and just be, sitting in his cave, in his sitting room, watching TV. And at the same time, he's been in the Lions group for 35 years. He's been the president 3 times, the treasurer 5 times, the secretary 5 times. It's like that need to be in a group. So when I was reading this, it was very interesting to me that he was the social 9, because that sort of explained a lot to me. And the other thing that was interesting, because more recently Dennis said to me, I think I'm a 3. And it even says that you can, because they do so much, they do look like very successful, but it's the 9 who does a lot, but then, is happiest just being copacetic and not doing. Any other 9s? Oh, Jerry. Right, come on down, Jerry. Yeah.
Thank you, my good man.
Now, have you noticed anything about the voices of
They're
the
low.
3 of them?
Even.
They're low, they're even. Yeah. Take it away.
This is very new to me because I didn't know anything about this until maybe about 2 weeks ago. And I did some work on my type. I'm a 9. What was interesting when Jerry was talking, it was like reading a biography of myself. And in addition, I'm a Libra. So there's this seeing both sides and the balance. I'm thinking back to 4th grade. I had just come to a new school. And I remember, without any details, but my people used to call me the judge because I would always try to quell any fights or arguments that took place. I think the biggest part of my personality that really struck when I heard this is self-deprecation. I was a radiologist, and I worked in about 4 different hospitals. I always got along with the people I worked with. And when people would say something like, "Yeah, you're a pretty good doctor," I really disliked that. I would say, no, people like me because I have a good sense of humor. And so I would always, and I still do it, tend to put myself down. I am definitely a lazy 9. Dennis's sleeping hours are exactly the same. Exactly the same. And my chair in front of the television has a cutout of my butt embedded into it. But I do see from Jerry's talk where I can and should go to be more assertive. because I do tend to say, well, where would you like to eat? That's me. I've had, as far as relationships go, I've had 6 marriages
Oh, yeah.
because I was trying to find myself in other people. I would imagine that was the reason, and that didn't work out so well. But this does give me an area to aim for, which I'm grateful for.
Wow, that's cool.
So you might be more the 1-to-1 subtype?
I would
Yeah.
think so.
Okay. He just made a great point in that that's how I feel about the Enneagram, was like, who has been following me around, videotaping my life? It was like, this was like A to Z, a description of me. Come on down if you would. Yeah. So again, the different subtypes, the different spectrum of welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Fred, and I came here today because I heard you were talking about me. and you were. Although there are a couple of things I would like to slightly disagree with.
Sure.
But first I'll just say that in terms of merging with the other, in terms of being conflict averse, those resonate with me 100%. The thing I want to talk about is laziness, because I think that is the wrong word. It's inertia. It's inability to act. So, for example, and this can be on like important things, like I need to make an appointment with a doctor, or it can be I need to put in a load of laundry, and I'm sitting there knowing I need to do that, and it just doesn't happen, right? And I can't even tell you why it doesn't happen, but that just, whatever it is that you need to act, it's not there. And so that may come off as laziness, but I'm actually a hardworking guy. I do a lot of stuff. I'm still employed. And in fact, I'm usually in the Bay Area during the week, which is why I never come here. But this week they told us to work from home, so yeah. Yeah. But I used to think I was a social 9 until about 15 minutes ago. But I think I'm actually a 1-to-1 asexual, because that a lot of what you said there resonated with me. I need to think about that some more. Yeah. And in terms of work, a lot of what you said there resonated with me. I'm very good at team building. I'm very bad at standing up for myself. I tend to disappear. It just, you know, it's like you said, someone's been following me around and writing it out.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's why, as I said, I don't like using that word sloth, because that, you know, a lot of this I think comes from the 7 deadly sins, like the older, maybe original writing, so it's framed in that type of language, and that point that Fred made is a good one, that it is more an inertia, that to you know, as I said, you need a cattle prod. It's like, and even they themselves need a cattle prod to get going. So Richard, come on down. And again, notice the voices.
I'm going to try to not do that. Yeah, the voice thing is fascinating. I have really had to work at having more inflection in my voice rather than just sort of talking along on a monotone. And I remember one thing that kicked that in. I was speaking at a conference, and the feedback forms were saying, "Love is information, but he puts me to sleep." And I went, "Ooh, ouch! I got to work on that." Back further?
You're good.
So, as a kid, if I had read if the Enneagram was around when I was a kid, that would have been really interesting. I was labeled as the peacemaker, as the mediator, the counselor, at least by 3rd or 4th grade. I could not understand why boys wanted to fight with each other. It made no sense to me. And so I hung out with the girls. And then they would all come to me for counseling. They, you know, was the only model. I didn't have any of those terms, so I thought of myself as the bartender that everybody goes to talk to about their problems. Had great insights. It took a long time to figure out I was an empath. Actually, I had forgotten about that piece. In junior high school, the empathing was so strong that I would come home nauseous on the school buses. And because all the bullies were picking on people, and I was the youngest, smallest kid in the class, so I was always picked on. And so I decided to walk home 4 miles from school every day, which I loved. Except for when it was raining, I would take the bus or something. But that was a way of, you know, just avoiding conflict. So I've always had this thing of wanting to avoid the conflict, do anything to get away from it. And the other thing that I think is 9 is no matter what, I always thought I just inherited this from my parents who were volunteerisms. Any organization I'd become a part of, they would elect me as the president. And I would, all through school, I would be the head of at least 4 organizations at the same time. And I started thinking about utopias in 7th grade, I think. And I think I had read one of the, who was it, Plato? Somebody, one of those great philosophers wrote a utopia, and then I started finding other ones, and was just fascinated by that. So I spent a lot of my life trying to create an ideal world through team building, through leading organizations, through partnership. I would always be the volunteer coordinator, different jobs I had, particularly when I was with nonprofit organizations. I would, I remember when I was at the Ecology Center in Berkeley, they told me that the way that they do the volunteer coordination job is that they had a list of things that we need help with, and they'd try to match people up with that. And I would say, that doesn't make any sense to me. Oh, and they would say, don't spend a lot of time on the volunteers and interviewing them because they don't stay very long. So I had a different model. I said, what are you interested? You're obviously here because you have something you want to give to us. What is that? Oh, it's not on the list. I think that's a great idea. Why don't you do that? And they would stay for years after I left the organization. They were still there volunteering because I had this different model of, anyway. I go towards the 3. I have such long to-do lists that sometimes I have to just take a break and go for a walk in the woods or something, you know, just because I'm getting exhausted by how many things I put on my to-do list. So so I go towards I have the one wing, a perfectionist and to-do list and get things done, and the 3 achiever. And I'm not sure about the subtype. None of them seem to match. The more likely is the intimate one. And merging. I've had that as an ideal for relationships since my first relationships. And I look for people who are, my first lovers were people I met in a gay tantra class, and we were learning how to merge with each other. So
So we have gone over time. So starting next week, we're going to move on now to the use of the Enneagram, particularly the spiritual use, the spiritual aspect, which is where or why it was created in the first place. So it's kind of like, this is only all prelude. This is only all information. And then next week we're going to take the deeper dive, hopefully, and then there's a lot of things that we can do as well. So once again, thank you all for being here, and thanks for all those who shared.